Like Dad, I can still picture the paint flaking off as I sat on our old, creaky porch steps, eager to get out. He had wheels beneath his feet and a heart too huge for any map, according to Mom. When the police arrived that day and reported that Dad's truck had been discovered, abandoned on the side of some forgotten roadway, I finally understood what that meant. At the age of 7, I clung to my mother's skirt, feeling the weight of her silent tears, even though I didn't fully comprehend them. But Jane Mom was a warrior. She worked extra shifts at the neighborhood cafe without Dad. She would frequently arrive home late, attempting to be quiet but never quite succeeding, and I would often fall asleep to the sound. When I was around 12 years old, I asked her one evening, "Mom, why do you work so much? Are you not worn out?" Her eyes were sweet yet exhausted as she sat next to me. "We need to make ends meet, Ella. We're tougher than life, aren't we?" I nodded, happy to be strong like Mom, even if I didn't really understand. When I was 18, Mom was diagnosed with cancer, which was a devastating blow. She put up a fierce fight, but it was like using a spoon to stop the flood. She died gently, leaving me with a pile of debts and a few memories. My desire, my escape, was to be college. For the first year, I was able to make ends meet, but after that, I was on my own. I balanced 2 or even 3 jobs with my classes, anything that paid. I recall crying on one really trying night at the university library. Surrounded by volumes that seemed as heavy as the world on my shoulders, I was by myself. I met John at that time. His eyes were worried as he approached. "Hey, are you okay?" I was ashamed and wiped my eyes. "Yeah, just college stuff." A bit hesitantly, he grinned. "I understand. By the way, my name is John." "Ella," I said, forcing a little grin. That was the beginning with John. He was different, kind and dependable, like a rock in my choppy sea. He didn't have much, but he gave me all he had, including his old, worn laptop, notes from classes, and a half sandwich. Sometimes we would sit together and converse, and other times we would simply sit in quiet. It was secure and cozy. Since Mom was here, I hadn't had that emotion. "You're the strongest person I know, Ella," John once said. "I have no doubt that you will succeed." I gave a little sour laugh. "Powerful. I feel as though I'm barely surviving." "That's what being strong is about, isn't it?" He said, hanging on even when it's the last thing you want to do. I gave him a serious look and saw that he was correct. With or without wheels under my feet, I knew I would survive because I was strong, just like Mom. Those elegant brochures were not representative of college life. It was challenging, rough, and put you to the test in ways you never would have imagined. My stomach was in knots as I waited in line at the financial aid office during my sophomore year. I was treated like a number by the woman behind the counter. Next, she yelled without raising her gaze. I started to say, "Hey, I'm here about my scholarship renewal," when she interrupted. "There is nothing I can do if it isn't refreshed in the system." Next. Feeling a mixture of powerlessness and rage, I left. I ran across John once more at that point. He would constantly show up when I least expected him to. His brows were wrinkled in worry as he said, "Hey, Ella, everything okay?" I gave a head shake. "No, not at all. A dead end is financial aid. It appears like I may have to leave school." John was silent for a while. "That's difficult, but keep going. You're more intelligent than half of these academics." Despite the darkness, I laughed. "I'm grateful, John. I simply am not sure what to do. Let's get coffee, please. My reward. You may fill me in on everything." That cup of coffee became many more. At college, John became my go-to person. He had a knack for making issues appear more manageable and smaller. I would try not to get overwhelmed by my own concerns when we sat in the cafeteria, him with his boundless optimism. "You know, Ella, you should start looking for a job on campus," he suggested one day. "Perhaps it will assist with the financial condition." I gave an eye roll. "You don't believe I've tried. Everyone seems to be trying to harm me or something." John leaned closer. "Not all of them. I've heard that the library is trying to find someone. You might as well be compensated for being there all the time." I considered it. Maybe, but what if they say no? After that, we discover something else. "Ella, you're not alone in this." That's how I ended up working at the library. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid some bills. Between stacking books and serving coffees at a local cafe, I barely had time for studies, but I was making it work one day at a time. John and I grew closer. He wasn't just the guy who bought me coffee anymore. He was my friend, my confidant. He knew about my mom, my dad, and all the messy bits in between. It was one evening, while closing up the library, that John said something that stuck with me. "Ella, you're going to make something of yourself. I just know it. And I'll be here cheering you on." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Thanks, John. That means a lot." College was tough, but with John by my side, it felt like I had a fighting chance. He was more than a friend. He was a reminder that some good still existed in this crazy, mixed-up world. After college, life took a turn I didn't expect. John and I got married. It wasn't some big fairy tale wedding, just a small courthouse due with a few friends and little fanfare. We moved into this tiny apartment that had more cracks than walls, but it was ours. It felt like a fresh start, a new chapter. Then came the problem. John's mom, Mrs. Smith. The woman was a piece of work. The first time she visited our place, her nose wrinkled like she'd walked into a dumpster. "This is where you live," she said, her voice dripping with something that was half disbelief, half disgust. I tried to smile. "Yeah, it's not much, but we're happy." She snorted. "Happy? John, you can do better than this. And what about kids? You can't raise kids in this." "This?" John cut in, trying to ease the tension. "Mom, we've talked about this. We're not rushing into kids. We're focusing on our careers right now." But she wouldn't have it. Every visit was a new complaint. The apartment's too small. The neighborhood's not good enough. Why isn't Ella cooking more? It went on, one evening after she left. I turned to John, frustration boiling over. "Doesn't it bother you the way your mom talks about our life?" John, ever the peacemaker, shrugged. "She's just worried about us. That's how she shows love, I guess." "That's not love, John. That's criticism." "There's a difference." He didn't say much after that. It was like he couldn't see what was so clear to me. His mom's words were chipping away at us bit by bit. Things got worse when she started hinting we should move somewhere better. I lost it one day. "John, we can't afford some fancy place." "Why doesn't she get that?" John looked uncomfortable. "She just wants the best for us, Ella. Maybe we could look at some other apartments, just to keep her quiet." "Keep her quiet, John? When are you going to stand up to her?" "We're married. This is our life, not hers." He didn't have an answer. That silence said more than any words could. So we kept living our life in our tiny apartment with Mrs. Smith's disapproval hanging over us like a bad smell. I loved John, but his inability to stand up to his mom was driving a wedge between us. It was like he was still her little boy, not a grown man, married and making his own way in the world. As time marched on, so did our lives, but in different directions. I landed a job at a marketing firm. It was demanding as hell, but I loved it. I was climbing the ladder, making something of myself. John, on the other hand, was stuck in the same old job, a manager at a local retail store. He seemed okay with it, but I couldn't understand why he didn't want more. One night, I came home late, exhausted but buzzing from a successful project. John was on the couch, glued to some TV show. I flopped down beside him. You won't believe the day I had. We landed the big account. John grunted. That's great, Ella. I frowned, looking for some enthusiasm. Aren't you happy for me? He turned a bit annoyed. Of course I am. It's all you ever talk about. Work, work, work. I sat up, stung. Well, sorry for being passionate about my career. What do you want me to do? Be like you, satisfied with just getting by. He shot up. What's that supposed to mean? It means, why don't you want more, John? Why are you content just being this? He didn't answer, just stormed off to bed. I stayed on the couch, fuming and hurt. The tension spilled over into everything. Even simple conversations turned into minefields. Then came the day when John dropped a bombshell. He wanted us to move to a bigger place, something more befitting our status. I stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Befitting our status? John, we can't afford a fancy place. We're doing fine here. He was insistent. But we can't live like this forever, Ella, and my mom keeps saying. I cut him off. Oh, so it's your mom again. When are you going to stop listening to her and start living for us? John's face turned red. I'm thinking about our future, Ella. Maybe you should too. That hurt. It felt like he didn't see all the hard work I was putting into building that future. It was like we were on different planets. In the end, we did move to a house that cost us a whopping $12,000 a month. I could afford it, but it was a stretch. John seemed happier, but every time I wrote that rent check, I felt a part of me scream in protest. We were living in a house that was too big, with a gap between us that was growing wider. I lay awake most nights, wondering how we got here. Was it the money, the jobs, or had we just changed too much? Just when I thought things couldn't get more strained between John and me, life threw a curveball. John's dad fell seriously ill. It hit John hard. They were close. Overnight, our already fragile routine got upended. One evening, after a particularly rough visit to the hospital, John slumped into a chair, looking like the world was on his shoulders. Dad's not doing good, Ella. The doctors, they say he needs constant care. I sat beside him, trying to be the supportive wife. I'm so sorry, John. Maybe we can get a nurse to help. He shook his head, his eyes distant. No, I've been thinking. I'm going to take care of him. I'll quit my job and move in for a while. I was stunned. Quit your job, John? Are you sure? What about our bills, the rent for this place? He snapped. This isn't about money, Ella. It's my dad. I need to be there for him. I understood. I really did, but the practical side of me was screaming. And I get that, John, but we need to think this through. We can find another way to help your dad. He wouldn't budge. No, my mind's made up. I'm doing this. So he did. John moved into his parents' place, leaving me alone in our big empty house. Days turned into weeks. I was juggling my job and all our bills while he was. I don't even know what. Every time I called or visited, it was the same scene. John either glued to his phone or the TV, looking exhausted and frustrated. His mom, Mrs. Smith, was always hovering, throwing in her 2 cents. One day, I found him sprawled on the couch, a beer in hand, eyes glued to some game. John, shouldn't you be with your dad? He barely glanced at me. He's sleeping. What do you want me to do? Sit and stare at him. I bit back my frustration. You could look for a part-time job, help out with our expenses." That got his attention. He sat up, angry. "Really, Ella? You want me to work now, while my dad's lying there, dying?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "We're drowning in bills, John. I can't handle everything on my own." His mom walked in then, always perfect timing. "Ella, John is doing a noble thing, taking care of his father. You should be grateful." Grateful? The word hit me like a slap. Grateful I'm keeping our lives afloat while he sits here doing what? Playing caretaker while watching TV and drinking? John stood up, towering over me. "You just don't get it, do you? This is family. Maybe if you had one, you'd understand." That cut deep. Too deep. I walked out, the sound of his mom's tut-tuts chasing me. I drove home, tears blurring my vision. This wasn't the man I married. This was a stranger, living a life I didn't sign up for. The days after John's father passed were tough. I expected things might start to shift back to normal, but they never did. John never went back to work. Instead, he spent more and more time at his mom's place, leaving me alone in our big, expensive house, drowning in bills and loneliness. One evening, I came home from work to find John and his mother, Mrs. Smith, sitting in the living room. The air was thick with tension. I could tell something was up. "Ella, we need to talk," John said, not even bothering to look at me. I set my bag down, feeling a knot in my stomach. "What's going on?" Mrs. Smith, who always had too much to say, started. "We've decided it's best if John and I live here. We can take care of the rent now." I was shocked. "What? This is our home, John. You can't just kick me out." John finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "It's not working, Ella. You and me, this life. I need to start over, and Mom needs a place to stay." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Start over? So you're just going to throw away our marriage just like that?" He shrugged. "It's been over for a while, hasn't it? We're just making it official now." I turned to his mother. "And you? You think you can just come in here and take over my life?" Mrs. Smith stood up, her voice sharp. "It's for the best, Ella. You and John were never a good match. He needs to be with family now." I was seething. "Family? What about me? I'm his wife." John stood up, facing me. "Not anymore. We want you out, Ella. The sooner the better." I looked between them, the betrayal cutting deep. "Fine, I'll go. But don't think for a second that this is okay. You're both making a huge mistake." I packed a bag with my essentials, my hand shaking with rage, and heard as I walked out the door. John's voice followed me. "We're doing what needs to be done, Ella. You'll see, this is for the best." Settling into my new, modest apartment felt like a fresh start. It was small, but it was a place where I could finally breathe, away from the stifling atmosphere of my past life with John and his overbearing mother. The walls were bare and the furniture was minimal, a stark contrast to the lavishness I've left behind. As I was arranging my few belongings, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an old mutual friend of John and me, Laura. "Hey, Ella. Have you heard about John and his mom? They're living it up, expensive clothes, fancy gadgets. Wonder where all that money is coming from." I stared at the screen, a mix of curiosity and bitterness swirling in me. Where were they getting the money? I thought back to the expensive house, the bills, and the lifestyle they had insisted on. It didn't add up. Shaking my head, I typed a quick reply. "No idea, Laura. Good for them, I guess." But the question gnawed at me. I couldn't help but wonder how they were affording such extravagance, especially after kicking me out, and with John not working. A few days later, I ran into another friend, Mike, at the grocery store. He brought it up again. "Ella, you won't believe it. Saw John and his mom at the high-end electronics store, buying like there's no tomorrow. Heard they even sold their family home. Crazy, huh?" I forced a smile. Yeah, crazy, but inside, my mind was racing. They sold the family home. Was that where the money was coming from? As I unpacked groceries in my kitchen, a small, unadorned space that was now my refuge, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I was moving on, building my life again from scratch, while they seemed to be living in a world of luxury built on what? Lies? Deceit. I sat down at my tiny dining table, a second-hand purchase, and let out a long breath. It didn't matter, I told myself. I was out of that toxic environment, free from their twisted dynamics. But deep down, I knew the truth. It did bother me. It bothered me that they seemed to be thriving after throwing me to the curb. I had worked hard for everything I had, while they seemed to be enjoying a life of ease and comfort. As the evening wore on, I found solace in the quiet of my apartment. It was mine, earned through my own effort and resilience. I had lost much, but I had gained something more valuable. My independence, my sense of self. 4 months into my new life, the past came knocking in a way I never expected. My phone rang one lazy Saturday morning, the caller ID flashing John's name. I hesitated but answered. "Ella, we need your help." John's voice was shaky, desperate. I sat up, alert. "What's happened, John?" "It's all gone wrong. We got kicked out of the rental house. Mom and we have nowhere to go." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Kicked out? But I thought you had money." A pause occurred. "Ella, the money is gone." His voice drifted off. Dad left debts, not inheritance, as we thought. I experienced a range of feelings, including shock, incredulity, and a slight sense of fulfillment. Were they genuinely wealthy all along, anticipating a substantial inheritance? Really, even for my ex-husband, it was too much. "So what do you want from me, John?" "We were wondering if maybe we could stay with you, just for a while, until we sort things out." I let out a brief, sour laugh. "Do you wish to remain with me? After everything?" Now John's voice was begging. "Please, Ella. There is nowhere else for us to go. Do you recall the happy times? Why don't we just—" I interrupted him. "Have fun, John. I was kicked out of my own house by you and your mother. Now when things are hard, you can't just crawl back." After a brief period of silence, "Ella, I realize I made a mistake." "I apologize. We're simply in extreme need." Having made up my mind, I inhaled deeply. "I've moved on, John. You and your mother have no place in the new life I've created. You must solve this problem on your own." "But Ella—" "No, John, it's finished. You made your decision. Accept it." With my heart racing, I hung up. I had a wave of empowerment accompanied with a slight melancholy. I had left the world I had known behind, and now John, the guy I had once loved, was only a voice on the other end of the phone. Lara phoned me later. John and his mother were mentioned to me. "Are you all right?" With a smile, I felt at ease. "Yes, I'm doing ok. I am genuinely liberated, Lara." I glanced about my tiny apartment, my haven, as I hung up the phone. Although it was so different from my life with John, it was real. I owned it. I had persevered through the worst and emerged stronger. That night, I came to the realization that this was my new beginning. A life in which I was in charge, and my happiness was independent of other people. Although I had lost a lot, I had also discovered who I was.